No one expected the most feared mafia boss in the city to abandon a billion-dollar wedding just hours before the ceremony. His black convoy changed direction without warning, leaving shocked guests waiting at a luxury cathedral while whispers spread like wildfire. But no one knew that a single unanswered phone call from his quiet, plus-size assistant had unsettled him more than any enemy ever could. When he forced open the door to her apartment in broad daylight, the heartbreaking sight inside changed his life forever. Before we begin this emotional story, if you believe that kindness is stronger than appearances, that everyone deserves a second chance, and that compassion can change lives, please like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who believes in humanity, and subscribe to Kindness Legacy for more unforgettable stories that touch the heart. Massimo Vescari ruled an empire built on fear, discipline, and loyalty. Business rivals trembled when they heard his name, politicians treated him with respect, and even law enforcement avoided unnecessary confrontations with him. Yet inside his headquarters, there was one person who never feared him. Her name was Maren Holloway, a plus-size woman in her early 30s whose calm voice and unmatched organizational skills kept the entire organization functioning like clockwork. She never asked for attention. She simply worked harder than everyone else. Many employees secretly mocked Maren because of her appearance. They laughed about her weight behind closed doors, assuming she had no ambitions beyond filing paperwork and answering calls. Some wondered why the powerful boss trusted someone who looked so ordinary. What they failed to understand was that Maren possessed something money could never buy. She was honest. Years earlier, when Massimo had almost lost millions because of a corrupt accountant, it had been Maren who quietly discovered the fraud. She never expected a reward. She simply believed doing the right thing mattered. Since then, Massimo had placed complete trust in her judgment. Despite working closely together every day, their relationship remained strictly professional. Maren respected boundaries, and Massimo admired her integrity without ever expressing it openly. She arrived before sunrise and usually left long after everyone else. She remembered every birthday, every important meeting, every detail others forgot. As the date of Massimo's lavish wedding approached, the headquarters became increasingly busy. Luxury designers arrived with expensive suits. Florists transformed entire rooms into gardens. Security teams rehearsed every movement. Newspapers described it as the wedding of the decade. Throughout the preparations, Maren handled everything flawlessly. She coordinated guest lists, organized transportation, solved last-minute crises, and worked until exhaustion without complaining once. Then something unusual happened. For the first time in 6 years, Maren failed to show up for work. At first, nobody cared. Some employees joked that she had probably caught a cold after eating too much. Others laughed cruelly about her appearance. Massimo ignored their comments, assuming she would return the next day. But she didn't. Her phone remained switched off. Emails went unanswered. Even emergency contacts produced no response. Something didn't feel right. Late the following morning, with sunlight pouring across the city streets, Massimo quietly canceled his final wedding rehearsal. Against everyone's advice, he climbed into his armored SUV with only 2 trusted bodyguards and headed toward the modest neighborhood where Maren lived alone. Her apartment building contrasted sharply with the luxurious hotels preparing for his wedding. Celebration. The elevator barely worked. Paint peeled from the walls. Children played outside without recognizing the expensive vehicles parked nearby. Massimo climbed the stairs himself. He knocked repeatedly. No answer. After several anxious minutes, he noticed the apartment door wasn't completely locked. His instinct screamed that something was terribly wrong. Slowly pushing the door open, he stepped inside. The apartment was silent. Sunlight filtered through dusty curtains. Groceries lay spoiled across the kitchen floor. Medicine bottles had rolled beneath the table. Broken dishes covered one corner of the room. Then he heard a faint sound. Following it into the bedroom, his heart nearly stopped. Maren lay unconscious beside her bed. Her breathing was shallow. Dark bruises covered her arms. Her face looked pale from dehydration. Nearby, a frightened little girl no older than 8 clung to her aunt's hand while trying desperately to keep her awake. Massimo had never known Maren was raising her orphaned niece completely alone. The child had spent nearly 2 days caring for the woman who had always protected her. Without hesitation, Massimo lifted Maren into his arms while ordering his security team to call an ambulance immediately. The little girl cried silently as they rushed downstairs. At the hospital, doctors worked frantically. Maren had collapsed from extreme exhaustion, untreated diabetes complications, severe anemia, and weeks of physical overwork. Worse still, they discovered evidence that she had recently been assaulted while protecting her niece from violent loan collectors who had mistaken her apartment for someone else's debt. Massimo stood frozen outside the hospital room. His wedding suit suddenly felt meaningless. The luxurious ceremony waiting across town no longer mattered. For years he had trusted Maren with every important responsibility, yet he had never once asked how she was surviving outside the office. He had seen her dedication but never noticed her silent suffering. Hours later, one of the doctors quietly explained that Maren's condition had been worsening for months because she consistently skipped her own medical appointments to afford medication for her niece, school supplies, rent, and household expenses. Every extra paycheck she earned disappeared into keeping that little girl safe. She had sacrificed herself without telling anyone. Massimo walked outside into the bright afternoon sunlight. His wedding planner called repeatedly. His fiancée demanded updates. Luxury guests waited impatiently. After several long moments, Massimo gave a single instruction. The wedding was cancelled. No explanations, no negotiations. The announcement shocked the entire city. Television stations speculated endlessly. Business rivals assumed he had uncovered betrayal. Social media exploded with rumors. But the real reason remained inside a quiet hospital room where one exhausted woman slept peacefully for the first time in months. Massimo stayed there every day. He arranged the best doctors available. He paid every medical bill anonymously. He hired tutors and counselors for Maren's niece. He quietly investigated the men responsible for attacking her and ensured they faced justice through legal authorities rather than violence. During those peaceful hospital afternoons, he discovered details about Maren's life that humbled him deeply. After her sister's death, she had abandoned every personal dream to raise her niece. She had rejected promotions elsewhere because flexible hours allowed her to care for the child. She secretly donated money to struggling coworkers. She regularly bought food for elderly neighbors. Even while barely surviving herself, she found ways to help others. No one at the office had ever known. Weeks later, Maren slowly regained consciousness. When she realized Massimo was sitting nearby reading paperwork, embarrassment immediately filled her face. She apologized for missing work. Even after everything she had endured, her first concern was disappointing her employer. Massimo smiled sadly. For perhaps the first time in decades, tears formed in his eyes. He gently explained that work could always wait. Lives could not. As Maren recovered, he transformed the workplace completely. Body shaming became grounds for immediate dismissal. Mental health services became available for every employee. Medical insurance expanded dramatically. Flexible schedules allowed parents to care for their families. Anonymous hardship funds helped workers facing financial emergencies. People were stunned. The once feared organization slowly became known for treating employees with unexpected dignity. Months later, Massimo publicly dissolved his engagement. He admitted privately that he had nearly married someone who cared more about luxury, status, and appearances than compassion. Watching Maren risk everything for a child had forced him to question the kind of future he truly wanted. The experience reshaped every priority in his life. Maren eventually returned to work, healthier and more confident than before. She was surprised to find coworkers greeting her warmly instead of mocking her. Many had witnessed the extraordinary lengths their boss had gone to protect someone they had once ridiculed. Some apologized sincerely, others volunteered to help her niece with school activities. Kindness slowly replaced cruelty. One bright spring afternoon, Massimo organized a company celebration in the same daylight courtyard where employees once whispered insults about Maren. Standing before everyone, he spoke not about profits or power, but about invisible battles. He reminded them that the strongest people are often those carrying the heaviest burdens in silence. He thanked Maren publicly for teaching him that loyalty means caring for people beyond the office walls. The crowd rose in heartfelt applause. Maren cried quietly while her niece hugged her tightly. For the first time in many years, she no longer felt ashamed of her appearance. She finally understood that her worth had never depended on fitting someone else's idea of beauty. It had always been measured by the love she gave others. If this story has touched your heart so far, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Kindness Legacy so together we can spread stories that remind the world compassion still exists. Special request. Comment, kindness always wins, if you believe true beauty is found in the heart, not in appearances. Years later, people still remembered the wedding that never happened. Newspapers had called it one of the greatest mysteries of the decade. But those who truly knew the story understood that the greatest victory was never about a cancelled ceremony. It was about a powerful man finally seeing the quiet hero who had stood beside him all along. Maren never became famous, and she never wanted recognition. Her greatest reward was watching her niece grow into a confident young woman surrounded by love instead of fear. And every time sunlight filled the office windows each new morning, everyone who worked there remembered one unforgettable lesson: sometimes the strongest person in the room is not the loudest, the richest, or the most feared. Sometimes it is simply the person who keeps choosing kindness, even when life has given them every reason to give up. That is the kind of courage that changes hearts forever.